Hello people, this is New Sensei. In the past I've been very critical of very cheap bows, the bows which are under $100 and typically are found on eBay or Amazon. Now most of the time you find really cheap fiberglass youth bows or generic unknown brands, and I've been a little averse to using them. Nonetheless, they do have a certain appeal to the consumer market. Many people will want to buy a bow for the lowest price possible, and often that's all you really need. Now for me, as long as the bow gives you a good impression of archery, then that's all that really matters. Sometimes when you go too low, you will find bows which don't really handle like a real bow and give you a very bad impression. So I've been contacted by Mandarin Duck, who is a Chinese company, and they sent me a variety of bows to try out along with certain accessories. So I will be doing several videos covering Mandarin Duck equipment and accessories. This has been requested by some viewers. I know people coming from the Survival Lily channel have seen her videos on the Mandarin Duck bows, and I too have been in contact with Mandarin Duck, and today I'll be covering the Mandarin Duck Phantom Takedown Recurve. The Phantom is available from Mandarin Duck Outfitters. It is their main takedown recurve option. A cast aluminium alloy riser, the Phantom comes in right hand only and measures 56 inches. The entire bow is sold with a riser, limbs, string, and a simple plastic arrow rest. No arrows or other shooting gear comes with this package. The riser by itself is very light and easy to turn and cant. The lightness is a good thing in some ways, but I would expect that this can present some challenges in keeping the bow steady. In other words, it would likely be easily torqued in inexperienced hands. Nonetheless, the low weight of the riser is notable and sits well balanced in the hand. This, however, will change when the limbs are attached, which we'll see later. It's worth noting that the grip is different to most recurve bows. While many recurve bows have a distinct pistol grip that has become the norm for both traditional and target recurve bows, the Phantom's grip has much less of an angle and is much thinner. In some ways, it looks more like a compound grip. The rubber coating gives it a nice feel, not cold and not slippery. However, it does take some getting used to. The grip doesn't provide much guidance for a correct bow grip, especially around the palm and thumb, so you have to know what you're doing. The narrow shape does lend itself more for people who prefer to wrap their fingers around the grip. Most experienced shooters tend to move away from this style or have much more control over it. The Phantom has the standard bushings for a sight, plunger or rest, and even a stabilizer bushing. The Phantom comes with a simple plastic screw-in rest. It takes quite a bit of effort to screw in. Otherwise, it's what you would expect from this style of rest. It has a fairly sturdy arm and has some cushioning to act as a plunger. You can always replace this with a stick-on rest. As to be expected, the Phantom is not an IOF bow. It uses its own limb pocket system. The limbs are attached using a hex wrench which comes with the bow. The bow is therefore not a toolless takedown, but assembling the bow is quick and easy. The limbs are made from wood and fiberglass, which is standard for bows of this range. You might note the damp spots around the limb pocket. The limb belt comes greased. These particular limbs are 35 pounds. When buying the bow from the store page, each draw weight is sold as a separate bow rather than a drop-down menu. As far as I know, the limbs are not sold separately. The site doesn't list the string material, though I believe it's Dacron. It's a standard endless loop string. There's nothing on it, so I added a thread knocking point for reference. If this is your first bow, note that the top loop is the bigger one. Fully assembled and strung, the Phantom looks like this, and first impressions, it looks like a legitimate recurve bow. It feels like one as well. There's not much weight to it. That might be a problem later on, but as far as functionality goes, it seems to be okay. I do want to point out that the bow is extremely top heavy, as you can see. Whoop. This is quite common for mini aluminium bear bows. The target bows tend to be better balanced, but as you can see here, you will have to compensate just a bit when aiming it. When you're at full draw, it will tend to lean back towards you, so you may have to pull it down just a bit. It's not a huge problem, but if you are used to more high-end bows, then this is something which might throw you off. Let's see this bow in action. So for this test, I'll be using my Eastern ACEs 720 spine. These are meant for my Olympic recurve, the 40-pound bow. They're not quite well matched for this bow, but it should be fairly close. So I've got a very high quality arrow with a reasonable tune with this Phantom Bear bow. Let's give it a shot. That comes out really nicely. Actually, the arrows come out really nicely. They're wonder quality arrows, but they're actually pretty close to the real tune. Oh, okay. I'm actually impressed. Now, some people call me a snob for using only high-end gear, but honestly, this actually handles pretty nicely. The vibration is actually quite well controlled. There's not a significant amount of hand shock. The aluminium does absorb the vibration quite well. So first impressions are, the arrows do fly quite nicely. I didn't expect my ACEs to come out of this bow that well, but being a 35-pound bow, it does have some heft to it. Vibration, not that much. I know some people have highlighted the bow as quite loud. I don't think so, actually. This is not noticeably louder than any other bow I've shot. It's actually pretty solid from my first impressions. That's more fun than I thought it would be. It still feels very solid. As is, straight from the box, it still handles and shoots really nicely. Part of the reason why I'm liking this is I've picked the right draw weight. 35 pound is probably what my natural draw weight would be. I shoot heavy for competition in my Olympic bow, but this is very comfortable to use for me. I'm also pleased that my ACEs, which are again quality arrows, just happen to be quite well tuned for this particular setup. You might hear the occasional metallic clang. This is the Mandarin Duck Ranger arm guard. It's pretty nice, I'll review it later, but there are some large metal decorations here which occasionally scrape the string. But apart from that, there's nothing excessive in this bow which I haven't experienced otherwise. And that comes out really nicely. Overall thoughts on the Mandarin Duck Phantom. I know a lot of people are wary of really cheap bows, and so am I. And coming from a snob, I think this bow is fairly decent. It is surprisingly good for what you're paying. So if anything, the value you get from the Phantom is very good. The bow doesn't feel like an El Cheapo, run-of-the-mill eBay bow. It does feel like it handles, it shoots like a bow should. And again, coming from someone who uses a large number of bows and has done so for a number of years, I am actually quite pleased with the way the Phantom handles. I didn't feel that the balance or the weight was particularly upsetting. Even the grip, which is quite different from what I'm used to. I'm used to the more pronounced pistol grips, which you see on almost every bow designed in the market today. But I didn't feel this was a problem. Now, for those who are particularly finicky about the way you place your hand, this may be a little problematic. But for me, I found that I gripped the bow quite naturally. I didn't mind holding it straight or slightly canting, so it does suit people who like to grip the bow. If you prefer to keep your fingers off the riser, this is a little less comfortable. And again, there's no pronounced thumb rest, so if you like the target style shooting or the Olympic style shooting and you want to hold it like this, that to me is a little more uncomfortable. But if you want to grip it like this, gently of course, the shape and size of the riser being quite narrow makes this particular grip more comfortable. In terms of the limbs, they perform as I thought they would. It's a pretty standard wooden limb. I can't really assess how much it stacks. I have a short draw length, so I can't tell if it goes particularly bad any more than 27 inches, but it's no different to an entry-level wooden recurve, and I think that's what my benchmark is. I've used a lot of beginner wooden recurve bows, the takedown styles like the Samix Sage, the Samix Polaris, or the PC Razorback, and those bows cost around $100 to $150, and those are the market standard, whether you like it or not, in terms of what bows should be like at the lowest cost. Now, being that the Phantom is lower than that, you would expect the Phantom to be worse in performance. And I would disagree. I think the Phantom is on par with most of the entry-level bows, but the value for money definitely gives it an edge. The fact that it does allow some use of stabilizers or weights, it does come with the standard bushings for sights. You can use different rests. I think this is a pretty good platform to experiment with. If you're starting out on your archery journey and you want to spend the least amount of money possible, but you still want a decent functional bow, I think the Phantom is very much a contender. Are there downsides? Yeah, there are a few. Of course, I mentioned the non-standard grip might be off-putting for some people. I have noticed that there are some blemishes on the riser. Being cast aluminium, it's not perfect. It doesn't bother me personally. The fact that it's a pretty clean matte black finish with black limbs does make it look pretty nice. I think again the black look will make it a big seller on the online market. Apart from that, I guess the lack of toolless takedown might be something which might annoy people who want to take it outdoors. The fact that you have to carry a hex wrench to undo the limbs might be a factor against this. That's why bows like the Samix Sage do tend to be very popular. Although I do find that the hex wrench makes it a lot quicker to assemble and disassemble, although having loose parts is going to be slightly frustrating. So as a survival bow, it does have some shortcomings. But I'd say as a bow that you just want to use in your backyard or to try archery out, I've seen far worse. And I think the Phantom does kind of break that trend a bit, where the cheap recurve bows tend to be quite poor. This one is on par with what other bows you can get on the market for double the price. My overall assessment on the Mandarin Duck Phantom, it's worth a shot. I am pleasantly surprised. I was skeptical at people who were saying that this was a really good bow, that it didn't matter how much you spent, this was as good as an expensive bow. And having used it now, it actually is as good as some of the higher level bows which cost a few hundred more. I didn't expect to use this more than once, honestly, but given that it's the right draw weight for a lot of my demonstrations, it's a fairly rugged aluminium bow which I don't mind banging around and testing things out with. I think this is a good platform to experiment with, and if you're starting out your archery journey, I think this is decent. I think you'll be surprised as I am at what this bow can do for what you spend. Anyway, this is New Sensei. Hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.